I couldn't sleep. Several days in a row, the tinnitus would be nonstop. And then the anxiety built up. And as the tinnitus got worse, the anxiety got to the point where I was literally shaking. I was having panic attacks, anxiety, the insomnia. Actually, if I could just rest, I would have been happy. I couldn't even rest. I was literally trying everything. I went through several medical doctors. I went through the alternative route. I used tons of melatonin. I used all kinds of sleep aids. You name it, I pretty much tried it. I took a number of those along with huge doses of magnesium, trying to sleep at different hours, trying to darken the room, everything like that. And then I took several drugs, Marrazepam. I had taken Zoloft and Xanax. Now, each of these I took over several days. And after 2 or 3 days or 4 days, depending on how long I took them, I noticed that the time I was sleeping was getting less and less. So when they wore off, the symptoms came back stronger. And it was more difficult, and I was starting to become at my wit's end. I would go from house to house to sleep because I was afraid to sleep in my own bed because of the heart attack issue. So I'd call up my family members, my adult kids, friends, anybody let me stay in their house for a night. And that'd work for one night, and then the second night I couldn't sleep again. So I was like a vagabond trying to find any solution I could. Was it the location? Was it the bed? Was it the drugs? What we're doing today, I hope, will be inspiration for people to realize that they have hope. There's one phrase I wanted to quote. This really helped me. I'm paraphrasing it from the Bible, but I want to say it, but it helps with regular life. It says that take joy in suffering. And that sounds weird, but it says take joy in suffering because suffering produces endurance, which we have. Endurance produces character, which we're all building on this program, and character produces hope. And from hope, all things are possible. And that's kind of what this is about. I'm thankful, again, I keep saying I'm thankful because I am. I'm thankful to you, Daniel. I'm thankful to God. I'm thankful to Faith and my friends and family. And the Insomnia group, I'm very thankful to because that group helped me feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself. And when I could write to people as much as I could, I haven't done as much, but I want to do more of it again, just to let them know that there's other people that are out there going through this, that they're going to be okay. Because that's the hard part, is they don't realize they're not alone. This is not unique, and many of us are going to go through insomnia. So I want them to know you're not the only one, and yes, you will get better. You're going to get better for sure. Just be patient.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to yet another really special Talking Insomnia episode. We have John with us. Welcome, John.
Hey, welcome, Daniel. It's so nice to see you.
So super nice seeing you here. And for those who wonder how this came about, you're actually a member of our Insomnia Immunity program. I've seen you in some of those calls. And you mentioned actually just a few weeks ago that you think you were ready to share your story. And I was so excited about that. So go ahead, John, and tell us, how did you start having trouble sleeping?
Well, this is a good segue. 30 years ago, I had trouble when I had chronic fatigue syndrome. And I took Ativan for several months, and because of circumstance, for some reason, it never got to the intensity level that happened recently. So I was able to come through that. So when this happened, I had a minor heart attack back in October, and I had it in the middle of the night. So what I didn't realize is after that moment, I started having problems with sleeping somewhat. It wasn't extreme. It didn't happen until I had tinnitus. But at first, that fear of waking up again with a heart attack was there. Subconsciously, I didn't realize that, but that definitely was playing with my mind. And the fact that I was alone in a place, in a home, so there's a lot of factors, being divorced, living by myself, all these things accumulated to what will happen if I'm by myself and have a heart attack. I'm going to freak out. So this subconsciously was working with me. But for a month or so, I still slept, but it was on and off. I still had some breathing problems and stuff. That subsided. Then tinnitus kicked in. And for some reason, tinnitus, it started having these aggravated nights of sleep where I couldn't sleep. Several days in a row, the tinnitus would be nonstop. And then the anxiety built up. And as the tinnitus got worse, the anxiety got to the point where, I was literally shaking. I was having panic attacks, anxiety, the insomnia. Actually, if I could just rest, I would have been happy. I couldn't even rest. And I was literally trying everything. I went through several medical doctors. I went through the alternative route. I used tons of melatonin. I used all kinds of sleep aids. You name it, I pretty much tried it. Tryptophan. What's the other one they have? There's several of these ones that mimic the drugs that you take later. I took a number of those along with huge doses of magnesium, trying to sleep at different hours, trying, darken the room, everything like that. And then I took several drugs, Marrazepam. I had taken Zoloft, and I took the other one was Zoloft and Xanax. Now,
Yeah.
each of these I took over several days. And after 2 or 3 days or 4 days, depending on how long I took them, I noticed that the time I was sleeping was getting less and less. So when they wore off, the symptoms came back stronger and it was more difficult. And I was starting to become at my wit's end. I would go from house to house to sleep because I was afraid to sleep in my own bed because of the heart attack issue. So I'd call up my family members, my adult kids, friends, anybody let me stay in their house for a night. And that'd work for one night. And then the second night, I couldn't sleep again. So I was like a vagabond trying to find any solution I could. Was it the location? Was it the bed? Was it the drugs? Was it and I stumbled upon your program because at first I learned about it was called, I'm trying to think, cognitive therapy, the traditional one. What's the name
Yes.
of
Yeah.
it?
Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
That's the first one that I tried because I saw some videos, and then I realized pretty soon that that was not going to work for me. And I stumbled across one of your videos, almost like a prayer. I've got to say this too. I slept with a Bible next to me every night because I was so scared. I was becoming so frightened, and that actually comforted me some too. So anyway, what happened was I ran across your program and I started listening to the videos, and a number of them mimicked what I was going through. Christian is the one that I work with in the Orange Group now, and Veronica, I heard their videos, and they were such a source of encouragement because theirs was almost the same, if not more intense. With the fact, and people have to realize with sleepless nights, so we know what it's like having insomnia. It's not just you just can't get to sleep; it's that you have that hyper arousal anxiety. That's the worst part of it. That it literally keeps you shaking throughout the night. And I was trying to figure out things to do. And then through your program, the program, and I advocate this to anyone, I started to gradually, I only started about 3 months ago. But what I started to do is I began to, try to relax as far as what I was going to do in the nighttime. Like I can watch a show, even though, I figure that might keep me up more. Or I kind of relaxed on the time. I went, one of the biggest things I would tell people that really helped me a lot is the timeless window. I stopped keeping track of time and I had no idea how much time I slept. And that was really good because then I was not getting anxious about how much time I had. Second thing was I started reading about the fact that you get hypersleep. And I think a lot of people don't realize even when you feel like you don't sleep, you are getting some sleep. So I was able to realize I start getting some sleep. One other thing, I established a pattern. No matter how little or how much sleep I got, I'd wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning every morning and I'd go for a walk, be about 2 miles. So some nights I may have slept nothing. Some nights it might have been a couple hours, and some nights it could have been 7 or 8 hours. I had those moments hard to judge, but I'd get up and walk through this 2 mile walk around a lagoon, and a lot of it I would do barefoot because I found out grounding helped a lot too. That also, and one other thing that helped, and this is kind of odd, before I discovered you, and even after I discovered you, I'd use ice packs. So I found out that I had ice packs I could put on my back or put on my arms, whatever, and it calmed down the anxiety. Now, this is not a treatment for insomnia, but it's just a treatment for the anxiety part of that would calm it down at least. So it was like a shock to the system. I guess I'll give some credit to Wim Hof because the cold showers did help, and they were something that allowed me to have more sleep, or not sleep, but rest. And I needed my body just to calm down. That was the main thing. And the program started, I've been on it now like 3 or 4 months listening to people, and I hear them and they come in just the same way I was, where it started with all these nights where I wasn't sleeping at all. Then the yo-yo effect, which I read. I really appreciate you explaining that because it seemed like go one night I would sleep somewhat. And I talk sleep, I'd be lucky if I get 2 to 5 hours, but I was happy with that, sometimes longer. Next night, I might not sleep at all. Then I'd sleep, then I wouldn't sleep. So, anybody listening to this, if you're going through that, that's normal. I went through that for a while. I didn't know when it was going to end. I think one of the things that I learned from the program, not NATO, which is kind of like what I remember from AA meet. I'm not in AA, but people told me AA meetings where the whole idea is surrendering, control what you can control, what you can't control, let go of, and try to know the difference. And with sleep, the one thing I tell myself every night now, and I started doing back then, is that I can't control this. So I have to let go, to a higher power, to God, whatever works. In my case, it would be God. I would say prayers and say, I'm going to let go of this and have faith and realize I have no control over this. And that started to relieve some of the mind games that were going on, that fear, that the fear of death, the fear of not waking up, those kind of fears, which it feels like everybody in the group has a triggering moments or things that happen that cause them to get into this hyper arousal. They can't seem to get out of that loop. And something I learned from the program too, and some other things that helped was learning that the anxiety is actually an opportunity. It's not something to fear as much as we think. It's like going into the fear, which sounds corny, but it's not. Going into the fear and allowing it to go through, you find out it starts getting less and less. Having faith, that's going to come through it. And so I go into that fear knowing I might have a panic attack or anxiety and just kind of ride it out. And I start noticing patterns that it was less and less and less. I noticed once you faced it, it was never as bad. And what I realized, it reminded me of, exposure therapy, where people with insomnia, they have a blessing or a curse, because we go through exposure therapy every night, whether we want to or not. And what's happened during this time period with the program with sleep is I become more and more callous, because you just get to the point where you just don't care. And I think one of the most encouraging parts you said is when you go through a sleepless night, you get up the next day, you go about your normal routine, and it doesn't seem to bother you much. And that's pretty much what happened to me. I start getting to the point where I could go through a night where I didn't sleep well, a disturbance, whatever, wake up, go about my day. I remember treating myself kindly was great. I get up and, okay, I had a rough night. I'm going to have my favorite, no, I'm forgetting it. It's French toast at a restaurant I have. So I'd have that in the morning, and I treat myself. So it was treating myself with kindness. I think that was one of the things I really liked, is that idea that you don't need to struggle with this. I had watched a TED Talks, and this lady was talking about how much of our life we really have control over. And she said maybe 5% out of any given day. And 95% you don't. You think you do. You may know, like an airplane, this is my destination. But how many deviations do we go along that route that we don't have control over? And so realizing you don't have control over it, which is hard for type A personality like myself, you start realizing, wow, I need to learn another adaptive strategy to relax and realize it's okay not to be in control. And that is really difficult. For me, that was very difficult to do. So, I can say right now, like last night, I had a sleep disturbance. There was a difference. Not sometimes they call them speed bumps, in which a air conditioner went on, which is normal for anyone. So that was kind of a problem. And I put on headphones, so I still will do things sometimes to get rid of the noise, and knowing the distinction between the two, and then going back to sleep and realizing it's okay. 'Cause I'm talking to you today, and I had a couple hours, woke up, couple hours. That's okay. Sometimes if I get 2 hours or 8 hours, I don't know the amount, and I'm probably going to keep the sleepless window for the rest of my life, because it just really helps with not trying to be concerned about time, because time can be your enemy if you're tracking it. I can say I ran into so many people are going through this too, which is amazing, and trying, not amazing for them, but trying to have them understand stuff, because they all want to use the same things that I went through. Did you try this? Did you try this alternative health? Oh, I tried pot too. I got to tell you a story about that. I've never smoked pot my whole life. I've never done any drugs, just alcohol. I look like Willie Nelson, but I didn't smoke. And Bill Clinton, sorry, I didn't inhale. So my friends, my daughter, and my friends said, "Okay, why don't you do that? It might help you sleep." So I did it one night, and sure enough, it helped me sleep. The next night I tried it, it didn't do that. So then I tried gummies. One night it helped me sleep. The next night it didn't help me. So the marijuana, God bless it, maybe it works for some people, but in the long run, it was just a temporary high that helped me to sleep. But gradually it wears off like pretty much anything else. So this has been the only thing consistent. It is very strange not having something to grab to help go to sleep, and relying upon just knowing that somehow you're going to get hypersleep, or even if you don't, you're going to be okay. And I think sometimes when you were on the channel and you talked, and it was nice, your comments saying, "Well, John, you didn't get much sleep, and you seem like you're very relaxed," and that's a kind of a good sign. And that's kind of where I thought I would come on and talk about this, because, I think the point is, even if I don't get the sleep that I think I should, now I'm at the point where I know that I'm going to be okay the next day, that I'm going to function. I'll do what I need to do. And even if it's a little less or more, it really doesn't matter. These are just temporary. It's not going to continue for long. So, You have any questions, Daniel?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I have several questions actually,
Oh,
but
please.
it was you told us like immediately a very nice like overview of everything that happened with so many insights. But maybe I want to start with the the events like many years back, the chronic fatigue and the like, let's say the bout of insomnia you had there. Uh, did How did that sort of what happened to that chronic fatigue? Was that something you struggled for a long while, or did it fade out, or what happened with
It was
that?
a year. I went through 8 doctors. Finally went to a doctor, got a diagnosis, and it took me years. The doctor I went to was Alternative Health, and he ended up showing me a methodology of different supplements, vitamins, health habits, meditation, all kinds of things that helped to gradually said, "It took you years to get to this point for chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's going to take you a while to get out of it." And he said everybody has Epstein-Barr within them. Most people do. And if your immune system's suppressed, it can act up as chronic fatigue. Could be a virus also, who knows? But the point is the treatment was a process. And at the end of that process, for some reason, there was some anxiety starting to come up. I don't know why. It's not something I can tell you. But whatever happened, his calmness about it, and I think his assurance that, "Oh, just take this for a while," kind of played my mind, I'm going to be okay because he was so good with the other stuff. So that's why the mental part of that, I think, is why that worked. And Ativan's usually very dangerous, but I didn't know at the time. I trusted him, and we weaned off it within a few months, and I was okay. Along with that, I've got to tell people after I got better from chronic fatigue syndrome, I started a show called Imagine for 15 years. I had 500 guests on it. I'm telling you this because I met all these alternative health people, people that did Reiki, people that did energy medicine, people that did herbs, vitamins, people in the forefront of frequencies and sound treatments and, ozone and oxygen and anything you could imagine. They pretty much I had on my show. So I figured when I had this heart problem and insomnia, I could go to all these people and one of these things is going to work. Well, I found out no matter what I tried, nothing was working, even after my years of experience. So that's what freaked me out more because I thought I had enough access to things from the past that I could be able to deal with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I want to actually go back to sort of like the how your insomnia like the second time started, but
Yeah.
not to like just feel for completely like your answer completely honestly here, but I want to ask you a question. It's a little bit leading question, but
Sure.
the question is, do you think like looking back that kind of like leaving that the chronic fatigue, that it could have been also like the process that the alternative doctor talked about could be a little bit of like exposure, that you're like having it for a while and kind of like not treating it as a threat or enemy, and kind of like acceptance was part of that as well?
Oh, 100%. I remember having panic attacks in the daytime, and he told me, and I'd taken up meditation and prayer, I'll say both help. And what I learned is to allow when I could not predict when a panic attack would occur. It could hurt when I'm driving or whatever. So if I had to pull over, I was in a car, and sometimes I was with the family, and the wife said, "Give me 20 minutes or so," and I'd have to learn to let it ride through. And learn to almost, if I could laugh at it sometimes as I'm jerking around or kind of acknowledge it and kind of just know, "Oh, here it comes again," and just be accepting of it, which is really hard, but to accept it coming and realizing it's okay and realizing, like I said, if you have faith in God or you have faith in whatever your faith is, allowing yourself to realize it's all going to pass. And the
Yeah.
more you can accept, the less it has a hold on you. So I remember times with my wife, I remember just sitting there and saying, "Okay, how long is it going to take? Just letting it ride, just letting it ride, breathing and stuff." And it was to the point where I got used to doing that, and I think that's what happened the first time. The second time around, I tried that, and for some reason, it wasn't working as effective. I thought I had it down. So I had to learn some new tools from what you did, but I did apply some of that still of allowing it to ride through me. So it's a real difficult process until you have a handle on something. And even then, I think the point is that you don't have a handle on it, but you can accept it. And that's the point, because I'm a personality. I want to figure these things out. And I'm going like, what if I don't need to? I remember one time, one thing I remember from what you said is to kind of go back and have some fun habits, do something you like to do. So I'd have ice cream late at night, which I really shouldn't, and I'd watch something I liked to. And it didn't affect whether I slept or not. Sometimes I would sleep regardless, you know. I'd be through I was at a place we're staying recently traveling. It's the first time I traveled on airplanes since this happened. And I'm in Iowa right now talking to you. So I was very nervous about that because the heart problem, the insomnia, but it's been very pleasant. This has been a good experience of challenging myself again in another way. And I recently took a trip with a friend up to a place up north in Sonora, stayed at a hotel, and they didn't tell me that it was haunted. So that was another thing. And I did my prayers. I relaxed. I realized, okay, let go and let God, as some people would say. And it's natto, you know, not controlling it. And I slept. So if they were there, they didn't bother me for some reason. I thank God. It's like even this, you know, even the ghosts wouldn't bother me. So,
That's
but it's
amazing.
it's it's a good journey. It's kind of, if you can look at it and laugh a little bit, it ends up becoming more of a ride where, like Christian says, what am I learning from this? What opportunity do I have? So this has made me a much more calm person, a lot of my friends say. And they can see it within me, a lot more faith in my life and other people's lives too. So.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. And before I forget it, you talked earlier about how there's very little things we have control over in any given day, right? And then you also talked about how, you're probably gonna stay to this like timeless night for the rest of your life. And in my mind, it was like it's almost like that becomes a reminder of that. That every night it's like, okay, now I'm not gonna know what time. I'm not gonna try to have control. It becomes kind of a reminder that there's so little we can have control over. I thought of that.
It's a blessing. You know what's nice about having a timeless night is you don't care, you know, and you're still going to get done with what you're going to get done with. Everything's going to be fine. But having that where you don't care about it, or being up in the middle of the night and, okay, this may sound corny to some people, but sometimes I'm up in the middle of the night. I can either be anxious, or sometimes I'll listen to some podcasts, some of your podcasts, or sometimes I just had a conversation with God. I said, okay, I'm just going to talk to you. Can you tell me what I'm learning from this, you know? And I had these conversations, and you know how calm it made me instead of worrying about it? Eventually I said, okay, I'm getting tired.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
having those ability not to feed into the anxiety and realizing that there's something. One thing I'd read, and you may know about this, is in a psychology magazine, that anxiety is not there to harm us. It's trying to teach us something that's been buried for a long time. And so sometimes if you can learn to ride that out, you're going to realize it's helping your body relieve some of the things that you don't even know that are stored in there. And I went through EMDR during this process too, to deal with some childhood stuff. And that did help in conjunction with the sleep program. So
yeah,
I would tell people, whether you're on drugs or not on drugs, or you're doing other projects, this project, the program that you have forward works with just pretty much anything. And the hard thing about it to realize is you don't have to do anything. I think that's what's the humor of it. Sometimes I would ask, you know, like I said, I talk to God, I say, hey, what do I need to do? You know, what do I need to do? And I just hear a voice say, nothing. So it's either God or Daniel, I don't know, but or both. But I just heard this keep saying, you don't have to do anything, just relax. You
yeah,
know, just do it. And it really is true. It just was so peaceful, you know. And I remark at the coaches and the other people in the program, because I see they come in where I was at, and I see them within a few weeks. You could see a difference. Sometimes it's longer, but I notice within a few weeks. And I want to give this encouragement to people. People change. They don't even notice, but they're already starting to sleep better, or they're accepting it better. Even though, oh, I had a sleepless night, but didn't bother me that much. And I'm like, I want to clap. It's so nice to see these people that are doing so much better, you know? And
yeah.
several of them I stayed in touch with, and will text or email just to see how they're doing, or they'll text me and say, how's it going? And so it's a good community. The support is just as important as the program, you
No,
know?
yeah, I 100% agree with that. And you know, what you said reminded me of something that happened maybe 2 years ago now. It was we were opening the I believe actually the yellow program. I don't even know, but we opened a new program, right? And so I asked Coach Samila, who had been gone, she'd graduated and she'd been gone for a year, to join as a coach, and she was very happy to do so. And she said once she joined, she said, "Daniel, it's amazing. like from a year ago, not a single student is here. Everybody has graduated. However, there's a new bunch of people and they have exactly the same questions, you know? It's exactly the same questions. But it highlights that it is this process, and really, you know, people find the truth, find help, find courage, and then
Yeah.
leave. But then there's new people with the same questions. But anyway,
I
I
like
want
that.
to ask you one more thing, John, or several more things actually. But the next
Oh,
thing
no.
that comes to mind is you've had this experience that many have that can be really upsetting to many people, and many people struggle with, which is the tinnitus.
Yeah.
And you know, it came about during this time of stress for you. What happened? Did the insomnia kind of become the bigger focus, and the tinnitus just fell off, or what happened with the tinnitus?
Well, it recently came back in a mild form, but not very much. It was much more milder, but it's just a little bit. But and for months it was gone. And I think and people say this, when you get one problem, when another problem comes along, the brain kind of now starts focusing on the new problem. And people don't want to know, but tinnitus is not often as much physical. It can be, but it also can be the mind interpretation of the sound, and that's what causes it to become the mind's focusing on it. And unfortunately, when it happened to me, it became so pronounced. And I've had other friends that had it for years. You know, I did a few things. There's a little trick that Dr. Berg talks about, hitting the back of your head to reset the brain. And I'll tell you, it does lessen it. It helps some. So I'd be sitting there doing this. People think I'm weird. I'd be tapping the back of my head where it was at. And yeah, it worked with the tinnitus. And some people within insomnia don't have tinnitus, but those that do can understand how difficult and debilitating it can be, because there's sometimes it feels like there's not much you can do. I found the more I could relax and be in a sound, positive environment, that means nature, something that was very relaxing, it would gradually dissipate. It could take hours, but I'd have to be, very patient with myself and very relaxed and realize it's a process that's going to heal. So yeah, I found the tinnitus would leave as the insomnia got worse. And then my friend said, "You're not talking about it anymore." So it's waves. And if it did come back, it meant my insomnia was getting better. So
Yeah.
gradually, both of those, it's definitely a cycle. I would tell people that as you notice improvement one, the other one may come back, but it will lessen. And then that one may leave, and then the insomnia comes back, but that will lessen. And each one starts getting a little bit easier to cope with in a way. And I think that's my advice, is just learn to ride those, because they will gradually get better.
That's amazing. Like when you the way you're telling it and the way I'm hearing it in my brain is kind of like you had the tinnitus, and then the insomnia became the bigger struggle. The brain was like, okay, forget about the tinnitus, right? Let's focus on the and then you don't really experience any struggle with tinnitus. Then the insomnia gets easier. Then the brain kind of like, oh, wait a minute, didn't we have this tinnitus thing? Oh, let's focus on that now that it comes back. However, you learned how to like meet insomnia, and then you apply that to the tinnitus. So then that gets easier, and then the insomnia comes back a little bit. But then you learned like from the tinnitus how to meet insomnia, and then that gets easier. It's like you learn from both in a way that helps with both, right?
Yeah, and it does. And the other thing to take into this is try to look at it psychologically or spiritually, I'd say, in my case. What's the 10 doing? It's causing me to slow down. It's causing me to try to enjoy the moment. Like I said, I'd walk in nature every day, but I wouldn't even stop and look at it. So then I start doing longer walks, more time. And it's kind of teaching yourself that you need to appreciate what you have around you, your breath, your sleep. How many times we don't realize the precious things we have in life? And again, I thank God for that, that we have these things and we don't recognize our heart beating, the fact that we can even walk is a blessing. I know people that can't. So it's kind of a time of gratitude, I think really helps with this process, being grateful for what you do have rather than what you don't have. So when the tinnitus would be gone, I would be thankful for it. And I'd say, I do a thank you to God and say thank you for this. When the insomnia, when I had insomnia, but I didn't have the panic attack or the anxiety, I'd be thankful, even if I didn't sleep or I didn't feel like I slept. But because I didn't have the panic attack, I was thankful for I didn't have that, because that seemed to make the situation worse for the next day. So it's being grateful for it. And it seemed like the more grateful I was, the less the symptoms and things bothered me. And that was very important. I tell everybody, make sure you have write down a list of things you're grateful for, or say them every morning and night. And it just seems to have such a positive impact, on the way you look at it.
Yeah, yeah. it just reminds me of something that I remember my fellowship director, when I was training to become a sleep doctor, taught me. And becoming a sleep doctor is actually mostly about like sleep apnea and breathing and the things that I mentioned. He was a pulmonologist, but one day he just randomly said like, you know how much we like a usual breath is, and then we were like guessing, and he said, yeah, it's about 500 milliliters. That's like a typical breath. So now let's all take a juicy 500 mLs of nice room air, and just like, and I was like, yeah, that's right. Like every breath is just like a juicy 500 mLs of room air. Like every breath we could be grateful
I
for.
like that. I like that analogy because we don't realize just a breath, the simple thing, or getting sunshine.
Yeah.
The sun, and I'll tell you something else with gratitude. It really was. I did a little game. I didn't tell too many people, but it was more something fun to get my mind off myself and be on others. So I'd be at a cafe, which Christian will say I'm always at cafes when I'm on the Insomnia program talking. And I would have an extra $5 bill I'd bring. And as I'm leaving, I give it to the barista so that she gives it to the next person in line. So, it was like thinking about that. And then one day I came back to the barista, and the barista told me, she said, "You know what happened that day?" And I go, "What?" She goes, "The next person in line asked if they could do that. So they gave it to the next person. Then that person gave it to the next person. It went down 4 different people helping the next person in line out." So, that took my mind off of the insomnia and made me look at a bigger picture of people in general. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
a beautiful
it
thing. And
was
it's almost like this interview, becomes meta here, because it's almost like this interview now, what you're sharing will help somebody in the community, and then eventually they'll be a guest and help somebody else in the community. And it's,
yes. And, I want to say something to people out there because I feel with social media and the pressure we have on having to be this instant life, or so much things are going on in our minds more than we realize, and I have a feeling more people are going to suffer from insomnia. I'm sorry to say that, and I'm hoping this program will give people that opportunity to see that they can detach. In some ways it helps detach from being on things that cause more stress, and getting into nature, getting into natto, learning how to let go. It's almost a philosophy in itself, and I think most people will have to come to grips with that eventually if they want to be able to deal with insomnia when it hits. It's not going away from society, and I think people need to be prepared. And if anything, what we're doing today, I hope, will be inspiration for people to realize that they have hope. That's the most.
yeah,
There's one phrase I wanted to quote. This really helped me, and I'm paraphrasing it from the Bible, but I want to say it. But it helps with regular life. It says that take joy in suffering, and that sounds weird, but it says take joy in suffering because suffering produces endurance, which we have. Endurance produces character, which we're all building on this program, and character produces hope. And from hope, all things are possible. And
yeah,
that's kind
wow.
of what this is about.
Yeah, beautiful quote.
Yeah,
And it reminds me of something that I always debate whether I should talk more about, but it's a little tricky, and you'll see why in a second. But
yeah,
I hope that everyone who finds us has like the same experience that you have, meaning instead of thinking of like insomnia as a problem that we need to
right,
fix, I
right.
see it as like insomnia is an invitation to learn so much about yourself, about life in general, that it
Yeah.
becomes the beginning of like a lifelong journey of like self-discovery and like,
Yes,
richness, and like just seeing life in just a different perspective. Um,
I like that. It's a blessing. See, this is a hard thing for people to realize. At the time, you don't think it is, but it's a blessing. And your coaches, like I said, Veronica and Christian, I can't say enough about them. They are a blessing. They talk about it as being a blessing. And I think at first people don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear it's a blessing because it's horrible. And I don't want to downplay how bad it is. I can tell you myself the times it was just the nightmares, the anxiety, the panic attack. My one friend called me shaky Al Jolson because he'd see sometimes in the day and the nighttime my legs were shaking, my arms were shaking, my whole body's shaking, and I was having trouble controlling. And he says he was really worried for me.
yeah,
So I'm telling you, it gets really extreme, and I'm very thankful. I'm thankful again. I keep saying I'm thankful because I am. I'm thankful to you, Daniel. I'm thankful to God. I'm thankful to Faith and my friends and family, and the Insomnia group. I'm very thankful to because that group helped me feel like I was a part of something bigger than myself. And when I could write to people as much as I could, I haven't done as much, but I want to do more of it again, just to let them know that there's other people that are out there going through this, that they're going to be okay. Because
Yeah.
that's the hard part, is they don't realize they're not alone. They're not alone. This is not unique. Many of us are going to go through insomnia. So I want them to know you're not the only one. And yes, you will get better. You're going to get better for sure. Just be patient.
Wow. Yeah. So nicely said. And as you're speaking, I was like, I think there's a person that you're forgetting when you're saying, that you're mentioning everybody you're thankful to, and that of course is
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
You took this journey. You were ready to do this. It's
I've
amazing to hear.
I'm a hard time thanking myself. I've got that's always been the thing I'm working on. I'm much better about other people, but yeah, I'm thankful to myself for giving me the kindness to let go and kind of appreciate simple things in life.
Yeah.
I'll give an example here that I think is good for people. It works with insomnia. Not quite a friend that he's not going through insomnia, but he's going through problems in life, sometimes on and off depression, not sure what to do. Happy. He's in my years, 60 some years old, and we're sitting there having coffee, and he's going, "Oh, when I do this, I'm going to be happy. When I do this," and I go, "This moment we're sitting, talking, having coffee, this is happy." Sometimes this is all you need, is simple things in life, and I think we're looking for the future thing that we're going to do, and we're always looking to that instead of enjoying the moment that we have. Like the moment I have with you right now. This is a great moment.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Now, I think I want to ask you those two final questions that you probably know which they are. But one is, and we've touched on this already, but I still want to ask you if you found, if you can give maybe more examples of things that you found, like you learned from the insomnia struggle that helped in other areas of life.
Sure. I think one of the things that helped me to do is to be the insomnia struggle. And I say this because both things worked hand in hand. I grew up a Catholic and got a kind of new age, and now became back into Christianity and Catholicism again. So it renewed my faith, something you get away from because you're so busy in life. You say, "Well, I don't need time to meditate. I don't need time to pray." Right. And so this renewed my faith, and it brought me back to having more patience with people. It brought me back to listening more than talking. It brought me back to appreciating life and the simplicity of it. We don't realize, like I said, just as you said, taking a breath is a miracle in itself. The fact that we're upright and able to walk, and we're able to talk. Some people can't talk, they can't hear. When I had the tinnitus, I realized how valuable is your hearing. We're a delicate machine, and every day that we have what we have, we should be so appreciative of what we have. So I think it's made me a better human being, in the fact that I feel I have more compassion for people in general. I feel it's definitely grounded me in the fact that I wanted to control things in the past, and now I realize I can't. I told you before, I'm an independent filmmaker, so I have all these slated things I was going to do, and it's had me refocus how I'm going to go about that and make films that are more inspirational, faith, and also just inspirational human interest stories that'll bring the best out in people. I want to do one on this type of journey, and hopefully we'll get a story of two insomniacs falling in love. So we'll talk about that. But that's one of my dreams too. So we can inspire people through film, and I'm learning to not worry about the ego part of it. Oh, I got to be rich and famous. More just the process of enjoying what you're doing. And I feel what this has is focuses on the process in the moment. It teaches people to appreciate things in a simplistic way. It makes them realize what's really important, and not the next day we have to achieve this thing, we have to do that. That might not be there if you can't take care of your health. That might not be there. So it's really opened me up to a whole different way of looking at life, in a more appreciative manner.
That's, yeah, amazing. You may have heard me say this in our insomnia
Yeah.
immunity calls, but
Yeah.
every now and then, and it's often actually, we're in these the group calls, the drop-in classes, and somebody says something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I could record that for the
Yeah.
and broadcast it to everyone. But now, you said something so wonderful, and it's recorded for everyone to hear. Amazing. Which leads us to our my last question for you, which is, if you could travel back to maybe October when this bout of sleep struggle started
Right.
happening, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself, relax, enjoy the journey. I may seem crazy now, but I guarantee by the end of it, you're going to feel like you're a different person. You'll be so glad you went through it. I told myself that when I had chronic fatigue syndrome. It was the worst time of my life. And then it ended up leading me to do things I never thought I'd do in my life. But at the time, they my family, I'm not supposed to be making films. All my other family members were in film and then acting and stuff in high school. I did nothing like that. So in my 40s, I got into it. Now I'm making films all because of the chronic fatigue and that stuff. Things opened up for me I never imagined because of the health problem I had. Doing a cable show for 15 years, interviewing Nobel Prize nominees and, several CIA agents, former agents. I had some real crazy people in there. Mind control and teleportation and Area 51. I could tell you the shows I had were so fascinating. It was just really good. But I never would have had that journey if I hadn't had this happen to me. So it's like you have no idea what journey is going to happen to you after you get through it. So I tell myself, the hard thing is you're in the desert now. Keep your faith, let go, realize that sometimes you need to go through a time period like a cocoon, like a butterfly, in order for you to come out of that cocoon again. So anybody going into this, feel like that caterpillar going into a cocoon and realize you're growing, things are happening. It's a struggle to break free from that cocoon. It's going to be difficult, but once you do, you're going to feel like a different person. You're going to feel more generous to people, more kind, more thoughtful. I mean, you're going to realize you're going to start living finally. You thought you're living before it, but now you're going to really live.
Wow, I couldn't pick a nicer way to conclude here. John, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. And we'll just say thanks to you, thanks to everyone in the community, and be in touch.
Thank you, Daniel. All right,
And
you take care. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hi, it's me, Daniel, and I hope you found a ton of value in the video that you just watched. As you can probably tell, we share everything freely on our YouTube channel about what leads us from insomnia to a place of peaceful sleep for the rest of our lives. But it can take some time and bandwidth to go through all the free content to find the answers to the questions that you have. And this is why we have already done curation for you in our Insomnia Immunity program and in BedTyme. So if you want to save some time and bandwidth, those are great options for you. In our Insomnia Immunity program, we have a video-based curriculum. In BedTyme, we have a text-based curriculum. Either way, what really matters is that the content is laid out in a logical fashion, in a stepwise fashion, where every step takes you closer to that place of peaceful sleep for the rest of your life. If this sounds like something you'd like to explore, head over to our website, thesleepcoachtool.com. And if you decide to join and let us guide you forward, we can't wait to see you on the other side.